The GOP's response to Tuesday night's election results and Democrats just running the table on them has been comically delusional. Now, if you remember 2010, Democrats lost pretty handily in those midterm elections, and Barack Obama went out the next day and said, we took a shellacking last night, and that is a sign that we need to listen better to the American people and make changes as a result. And they did. And that's why Barack Obama was able to win another term in 2012, because Democrats read the tea leaves and course corrected as a result of those election results. The current GOP, not so much. They have spent the past 36 hours tripping over themselves, trying to say that everything is perfect. They're still set up to do so well in the midterms next year. And the election results on Tuesday have nothing to do with their catastrophically bad governing style. Now, the first person to kick that off, my favorite punching bag, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been doing press conferences the past couple of days saying everything's fine, and he's still very optimistic about where things are going to go. So let's see what he said in a press conference that he had yesterday.
Eruptions. They've assaulted ICE officers. They have spurred on political violence, and they closed down the government, which is their most basic duty and responsibility. I think the American people are smart. I think they will understand this, and I think the midterm is going to be a great one for us. We had a demographic shift in 2024. We have a very favorable election map on the Republican side, and it will be even more favorable once all the redistricting stuff is settled out.
Nothing says we've earned our voters' trust like saying that you're going to have to rely on redistricting next year in order to keep your positions in the House. His optimism seems to come from cheating and trying to rig the game, or as opposed to actually giving policies that are going to make them popular, so voters put them back in. And I think that is the thing. It's you see all of these. He talked about the demographic shifts, and someone asked if he noticed the demographic shifts in the election on Tuesday, and he kept saying, "Oh no, we're fine. That it was just a one-time thing," forgetting the fact that those demographic shifts that we saw in 2024 were one-time demographic shifts to the Republicans. Those voters that moved toward Trump in 2024 were historically Democratic stronghold demographics of people. And the GOP has spent the past year acting like they have an iron grip on these new demos, and they don't. And so for him to just pretend this was a one-time blip, it's like, no, maybe 2024 was the one-time blip, and you're just choosing to ignore that. And he was asked today in another press conference what he had to say about the fact that Donald Trump, after the election results on Tuesday, sent out a Truth Social post in which he acknowledged the fact that Republicans are getting blamed for the shutdown. He said the quiet part out loud, and he acknowledged what is the truth and what polling shows, which is that Republicans, in the eyes of the American people, are the ones that are responsible for what is going on in our government right now. And Mike Johnson doesn't seem to agree with the president on that. Let's see what he had to say when he was asked that question today.
The president yesterday said that Republicans were getting killed for the shutdown. Is it helpful to have them talking like this when it's actually emboldening Democrats not to pay?
Look, I've spoken with the president about it. I reminded him, as I said this morning, this was not a surprise to us. I mean, blue states elected blue leaders. I mean, so what? I mean, it would have been a huge headline if we could have had an upset there, but that was to be expected. As Leader Scalise said, I mean, if the three big elections yesterday would have been in Louisiana, Alabama, and Texas, you'd have a totally different narrative, right? Or name any red state. It just so happened that those were the blue states. That was the blue outcomes. That's what everybody expected. I don't read too much into that. Yes.
So apparently the losses this week, which they were projecting a ton of confidence about at the beginning of the week, had nothing to do with the shutdown. It's just the fact that they're blue states. And that's the thing. And that's what Mike Johnson does time and again. He pretends like he doesn't know the details around why something has happened. It's always this big picture. Well, they're blue states, so it doesn't matter, ignoring the fact that there were these massive demographic shifts toward Democrats last night. Across the country, you had Latino voters swing massively back toward Democrats. You had young men, which the GOP has spent the past year acting like they would hold on to forever. You had young men swing hugely back toward the candidates. You had women overwhelmingly voting for Democrats, even more so than usual. And then he fails to acknowledge the fact that in Mississippi, for example, there was a state Senate election that Democrats had no idea they could win. They ended up winning it, and they broke the super majority that the Mississippi Republican Senate has right now. You have those two commissioner races in Georgia that were not supposed to go toward Democrats, that the Democrats ended up winning by 15, 20 points. And so this attempt to downplay it is just putting your head in the sand and not acknowledging that a change of course is necessary. Now, Mike Johnson is an expert deflector, and he's good at responding to things and then moving on before people can talk to him and hold him accountable on it. And look, that is a constant frustration I have watching the media talk to Mike Johnson and not hold his feet to the fire with basic follow-up questions. However, I think the award for the most delusional take on the election results was from GOP Congresswoman Lisa McClain yesterday when she was on CNN. Let's take a look at what she had to say to Jake Tapper.
It's hard to see anything last night that was an endorsement of what the Republican Party is doing right now.
Yeah, well, let me give you the other side of that story. Is voter turnout from Republicans was not high, not high at all. But I think part of that reason is because Republicans, for the most part, are happy with what's happening. The border's closed, crime is down. Inflation under Biden used to be 9%. It's now down to 3%. Interest rates are down, mortgages down. Let me just finish. Let me just give you the other side.
I mean, Jake Tapper literally laughed in her face. Voters don't not show up on election day because they're thrilled about how things are going. That's not how elections work. If Republican voters were that happy with the state of the country, they would theoretically want to see more Republicans in positions of power to keep those policies going. I don't know who on her team told her that that was the right message to send, but it is, for me, will go down in some of the craziest election spins you'll ever see in your life. And look, we all know Republicans lost because voters are pissed off. They're angry that Trump has shut down the government. They're angry that they're starting to get their healthcare insurance renewal notices this week and seeing them go up by 200 or 300%. I had a family friend. I just saw them post on social media today. She was paying $497 a month for her healthcare. She just got her renewal notice. It's going to be nearly $1,800 a month for the same exact plan next year. And so there is such a disconnect between how Americans are feeling and what the GOP is saying. And just talking and living in this delusional world and pretending like things are okay isn't going to make it true. The voters aren't going to say, oh, well, Lisa McClain said I'm really happy about everything, so I guess I am. They're going to say, no, I just got my renewal notice and this sucks and I'm pissed and I'm going to go vote for Democrats now because I don't like what I'm seeing, including the people who swung back to Trump in 24 and are swinging back to Democrats now. But of course, the king of delusion himself, Donald Trump, had his own take on everything that's going on in the state of the economy and continuing to give this narrative that, the economy is perfect right now and things are as good as they've ever been. And that's what we're going to hear him say right here. Let's take a look.
She is a registered Republican all her life. She voted for you 3 different times, but she is not happy about how her prices have not come down that she sees. And she said this, quote, I want the Republicans to keep control of Congress in 2026, but something has to be done fast. I don't see the best economy right now. Wall Street numbers do not reflect my Main Street money. Please do something, President Trump. So I guess what do you say to Regina and people like her?
Well, I do say this: beef we have to get down. I think of groceries. You know, it's an old-fashioned word, but it's a beautiful word. Beef we have to get down, but we've got prices way down. And think of this: energy. She drives a car, probably, and her energy prices are way down. And energy is so all-encompassing. It's so big that when energy goes down, everything comes down. Everything follows it. And I have energy down to 5-6 year lows now.
Let's ignore the fact that he called groceries an old-fashioned word. That it literally makes no sense. I think this really highlights, unfortunately, what a simplistic person the president is, and his inability to understand how things are interconnected and how things all connect in the grand scheme of things. For him, for example, he just thinks energy, he thinks of energy as gas prices. That's all he thinks. So when he says they're at a 5-year low, he's just talking about gas prices. And it's great that gas prices are low, but he's ignoring rising energy costs for everybody else. He's ignoring that, electricity prices for the average American are up nearly 20% this year. He hasn't done a thing to do that. He's talking about food and saying beef prices. That's one thing in a large grocery economy. And so for him, he lives in this simplistic world where he takes these singular things and focuses on them as opposed to focusing on the big picture of everything that's going on. So while his trade war is wreaking havoc on groceries, on energy, on everyday items, he's focused on these one thing. So he'll get beef prices down and he'll go, "See, I've solved the grocery problem." No, you haven't. You focused on one thing while everything else is getting worse. And that is the problem with Donald Trump. He is so disconnected from reality that he has an inability to see beyond his own bubble. And that is exactly why voters rejected his party across the map this week. I want to end with a clip of a Republican who actually had objectively maybe an okay take on why things went wrong. It's just a little ironic who it came from. Let's take a look at that.
We got our asses handed to us in New Jersey, Virginia, and New York City. Democrats swept all three. There's 2 key lessons for Republicans. Listen carefully. Number 1, our side needs to focus on affordability. Make the American dream affordable. Bring down costs, electric costs, grocery costs, healthcare costs, and housing costs, and lay out how we're going to do it. And number 2, cut out the identity politics. It doesn't suit Republicans. It's not for us. That's the woke left's game, not ours. We don't care about the color of your skin or your religion. We care about the content of your character. That's who we are.
That is beyond crazy coming from Vivek Ramaswamy, a person who has built his entire brand in GOP politics on taking out wokeism and calling American culture mediocre. He is a poster boy for a GOP culture war BS. And now he watched that it's not working anymore and he's going, oops, I guess we have to pivot. Well, guess what? The GOP doesn't have plans for anything. The Democratic candidates this week were laying out concrete plans for how they were going to solve the cost of living crisis. The reason the GOP has to rely on culture war BS so much is because they say we want this and we want that, but they don't actually have a plan to get it. And they never are able to articulate what that plan is, what that plan is going to be. And so it's great that Vivek thinks that that's what the GOP needs to do. They're just not going to be able to do it because they don't care and they're too disconnected from reality to execute on their promises. Now, this week wasn't just a bad week or a bad election for Republicans. It was a reality check that they refused to take. And the problem is this GOP delusion isn't harmless. It is the reason that the government is shut down. And it's the reason why the American people are struggling so much, because the GOP is tuning them out and living in a world that doesn't exist. And until Republicans wake up to that, they're not just going to lose elections, they are going to lose their entire grasp of reality. That is it for me today. If you liked what you saw, throw a like on this video, follow the Dem Wins Media YouTube channel, follow me at buildingthebench.substack.com, and we will keep bringing you the news as you need to see it. Thanks for watching.